Chosen ones, this is why you're so tired, but still standing. There are mornings when the weight on your chest feels heavier than the blankets wrapped around you. The sun creeps in through the window, and the world expects you to rise, but your spirit is too bruised to move. Your body is present, but your soul feels scattered across unseen battlefields. This isn't laziness, it's not weakness, it's not rebellion. It's the toll of carrying a calling that no one else around you can see. You've been standing in the gap, praying when no one else would, holding back floods for people who never even noticed the storm. And now, you're tired, bone tired, spirit tired. The kind of tired that sleep can't fix. The kind of tired that worship songs sometimes can't reach. But before you think you're failing God, hear this. Even the chosen ones grow weary. Even those anointed by heaven have days where they collapse under the weight of their assignment. Elijah called down fire, then begged God to take his life. Jesus, perfect in all things, still wept and groaned in Gethsemane. So no, you're not broken. You're becoming. And the battlefield you're lying in right now isn't your end. It's your altar. God's not asking you to leap today. He's not asking you to shout. He's asking you to breathe. Because in this quiet, in this stillness, He is with you. Not disappointed. Not distant. Just present. This message, it's for you. You're not lost. You're being rebuilt. Section 1. The battle under the covers. They see you lying there and assume you've given up. They think you're just tired, maybe even lazy, maybe drifting. But what they don't see, what they can't see, is that you're in the middle of a war. Not a war with swords and sirens, but one far more violent, one that happens in silence, in stillness, under the weight of blankets that feel more like chains. There's a reason you can't get up, and it's not because you lack motivation. It's because you've been fighting invisible enemies all night long, and now your body is drained from battles that no one else even knows are happening. This is where the enemy does some of his most dangerous work. Not in the noise, but in the quiet. When your phone is off, when no one is texting, when the lights are low, and no known is calling to check on you. It's in that stillness that the real war begins. The whispers come, not loud, not obvious. They creep in like fog. You're failing. You're falling behind. You're a burden. No one would notice if you disappeared. And because the whispers sound like your own voice, you start believing them, not because you want to, but because you're too tired to fight back. The battlefield is under the covers, in the silence between your alarm and your decision to get up, in the space between one breath and the next. And while the world goes on like nothing's wrong, you're fighting with everything you have just to exist. But let me speak into that place right now. This stillness is not defeat. Heaven sees it. Angels are dispatched. Not just when you're shouting praises, but when you're curled up, unable to speak, and you whisper, "God, help me." You are not crazy. You are not forgotten. You are not weak. You are fighting in one of the most sacred places there is. The war that no one claps for. The struggle no one cheers for. The resistance that looks like nothing to the world but looks like warfare to heaven. Scripture says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. This is that wrestle. Not with enemies you can see, but with spirits of discouragement, heaviness, shame, and silence. And while your room may feel empty, you are surrounded by a host of heaven that will not let you fall. This is not the end of you. This is not your fall. It's your fight. And even now, while your body feels motionless, your spirit is still holding the line. You're not losing. You're still here. You're still breathing. You're still his. Section 2. Even the anointed collapse. There's a lie that's been whispered in the church for too long. A lie that says if you're truly called, truly anointed, truly walking with God, then you won't feel like this. That if you had enough faith, you wouldn't be struggling to get out of bed. That if you were truly spiritual, you wouldn't be drowning in anxiety, fighting waves of exhaustion, or questioning whether you have the strength to keep going. But let me tell you something the enemy doesn't want you to hear. Even the anointed collapse. Even the ones who call down fire from heaven can find themselves lying under a tree, asking God to take their life. That was Elijah, the prophet, the miracle worker, the man who stood against an entire nation of false prophets. He still broke, he still ran, he still said, "I've had enough, Lord." That's in your Bible. And it's not a story of failure, it's a story of humanity, of divine exhaustion, of the toll spiritual battles take on real breathing people. Jeremiah wept until his bones shook. David cried so often his tears became his food. And Jesus, yes, Jesus, the spotless Son of God, sweat blood in the garden because the weight of his assignment was so great, it pressed him to the edge of death before the cross even touched his back. You are not weak because you're tired. You're not failing because you're drained. You're not broken because you have moments where you want to walk away. You are human, and God is not ashamed of your humanity. He stepped into it. He wore it. He felt it. He carried it to the cross, so you would never have to be perfect to be powerful. The church has celebrated victory, but hasn't always known how to sit with fatigue. But God does. He knows the weight you're carrying, the nights you stay up interceding for others while no one knows you haven't slept, the Sundays you lead worship or serve while your own soul is screaming for rest, the smiles you wear while you silently wonder how much longer you can hold on. This is not the evidence that you're weak, it's the evidence that you're carrying something sacred. You're not falling apart because you're undisciplined. You're collapsing because you've been standing on the front lines for too long without backup. Even Jesus needed someone to help him carry the cross. So why are you still trying to carry yours alone? God never called you to perform your strength. He called you to surrender it. He doesn't need your pretending. He wants your honesty. He doesn't need you to fake joy. He's near to the broken-hearted, and the same hands that form the heavens are the same hands reaching for you now, not to pull you into performance, but into peace. This isn't the end of your story. It's the pause before resurrection, the breaking before the breakthrough, collapse before the comeback. And heaven isn't looking at you with disappointment. Heaven is looking at you with compassion, ready to restore, ready to rebuild, ready to remind you, even the anointed collapse. But they don't stay down, they rise, and so will you. Section 3, the bed as a battleground. Most people see a bed and think of rest. They see a place to recover, to dream, to be still. But for you, the bed has become something else entirely. It's no longer a place of peace. It's a place of pressure. A place where your mind runs faster than your body ever could. A place where your spirit fights battles before your feet even touch the floor. What should be a refuge has become a war zone, and every morning feels like waking up under siege. Because when the world finally goes quiet, that's when the whispers begin. Not the voice of God, but the cold, calculated murmurs of the enemy. They don't shout. They sound like your thoughts. They sound familiar. They come wrapped in your own tone. And that's what makes them so dangerous. You're behind. You're not enough. You'll never catch up. God's tired of waiting on you. And without warning, the bed becomes a cage. Not because you're not trying, but because you're trying too hard for too long, with too little left in the tank. Lying there in the dark, the silence gets loud. Scriptures you once clung to feel distant. The worship songs don't hit the same. Your prayers start to feel like empty echoes. You wonder if heaven's closed its ears, if maybe this is just how it's going to be now. The ache, the apathy, the overwhelming desire to shut down and escape. You're not resting, you're resisting. Every time you open your eyes, every time you inhale one more breath, you're declaring war against a darkness that wants you to give up quietly. But the enemy has underestimated who he's messing with. Because while he comes to whisper lies in the stillness, he forgot something. God is there too, not just in the church service, not just in the loud praise, but in the quiet, in the still, in the room where no one sees you but him. He's there, sitting on the edge of that same bed the enemy tried to turn into your grave. And he's not rushing you. He's not rolling his eyes at your pain. He's simply staying present, staying close. He knows your breath is a prayer. He knows your tears are intercession. He knows that even in silence you're still his. This bed, the one soaked in your sighs, covered in your questions, isn't just where you broke down. It's where God has been building you in secret. Because the enemy wants to turn your bed into a prison. But God calls it your altar. The place where you've wrestled. The place where you've wept. The place where you said, God, I don't have words, just hold me. And he did. He still is. You may not be getting up in strength yet, but you are getting up in surrender. And that kind of rising terrifies hell. Because it means you're not moving in your own power. You're moving in his. You're learning to walk again by leaning, to stand again, by trusting, to rise again by resting. And when you finally swing your legs over the edge of that bed and put your feet on the floor, darkness will tremble, because it will remember the day a warrior stood up after being forged in fire. This isn't just a bed. This is where heaven met you in your lowest place. And heaven never leaves empty-handed. Something sacred is happening here. Don't despise it. Don't rush it. Just stay with him. Healing is on the way. Strength is being restored, and the battleground is about to become the birthing place for the next chapter of your calling. Section 4. The hidden exhaustion of the sensitive. You've always felt things more deeply than others. You walk into a room and feel the heaviness before a word is spoken. You scroll through your feed and absorb the pain behind people's smiles. You lie down at night and carry burdens that don't even belong to you. And you've wondered, silently, painfully, why do I feel so much? Let me tell you why. Because you're not ordinary. You are spiritually sensitive. Heaven-wired, God-designed. And your sensitivity is not a curse, it's a calling. The exhaustion you carry isn't just from what you've been through. It's from everything you've picked up along the way. People think you're just tired because of life's pace. But no, you're tired because your spirit is constantly decoding what others can't even see. You sense danger before it arrives. You feel sorrow before it's spoken. You discern shifts in people, places, and atmospheres that no one else even notices. And that level of spiritual awareness comes at a cost. That's why small talk drains you. Why surface-level relationships feel like sandpaper on your soul. Why you crave silence, depth, and moments with God more than crowds or conversations. You weren't created to blend in. You were created to pick things up in the spirit. To intercede before others realize there's even a need. That kind of calling isolates you. It confuses those around you. It even causes you to question yourself. But make no mistake, what people call too emotional, God calls prophetically tuned. You hear heaven differently. You feel spiritual shifts faster. You carry grief that isn't yours because God trusts you to stand in the gap. For people who don't even know they're in danger. That's why rest never seems to be enough. Sleep doesn't clear spiritual downloads. Naps can't erase the weight of what you've absorbed. Because what you're carrying isn't physical, it's spiritual. And only the presence of God can release what your soul has taken on. You've wept over people who never wept for you. Prayed for those who mocked you. Poured out until you felt empty. Then got up and poured out again. Not because you're a martyr, but because you're marked. You're chosen. And chosen people often feel what others ignore. That sensitivity isn't weakness. It's sacred. It's how heaven communicates with you. It's how the Spirit leads you. And yes, it's overwhelming. Yes, it's lonely. Yes, it feels like too much sometimes. But that sensitivity is the reason the enemy works overtime to make you believe there's something wrong with you. If he can make you shut down your discernment, if he can get you to numb your feelings, he knows he can mute your voice. And if he can mute your voice, he can silence the warning heaven placed in your mouth for someone else's breakthrough. You've been carrying more than your portion, not because you're weak, but because you're chosen. You're exhausted, not from failure, but from faithfulness. So instead of trying to toughen up, press in. Instead of silencing your tears, bring them to the one who collects every single one. And instead of running from your sensitivity, realize it's your spiritual radar, your divine connection point to God's heart. Don't let the weight fool you. You're not falling apart. You're feeling what most people have trained themselves to ignore. You're not too much. You're just in tune. And in the kingdom of God, that's not a burden, that's a gift. Section 4. The hidden exhaustion of the sensitive. You've always felt things more deeply than others. You walk into a room and feel the heaviness before a word is spoken. You scroll through your feed and absorb the pain behind people's smiles. You lie down at night and carry burdens that don't even belong to you. And you've wondered, silently, painfully, why do I feel so much? Let me tell you why. Because you're not ordinary. You are spiritually sensitive, heaven-wired, God-designed. And your sensitivity is not a curse, it's a calling. The exhaustion you carry isn't just from what you've been through, it's from everything you've picked up along the way. People think you're just tired because of life's pace. But no, you're tired because your spirit is constantly decoding what others can't even see. You sense danger before it arrives. You feel sorrow before it's spoken. You discern shifts in people, places, and atmospheres that no one else even notices. And that level of spiritual awareness comes at a cost. That's why small talk drains you. Why surface-level relationships feel like sandpaper on your soul. Why you crave silence, depth, and moments with God, more than crowds or conversations. You weren't created to blend in. You were created to pick things up in the spirit, to intercede before others realize there's even a need. That kind of calling isolates you. It confuses those around you. It even causes you to question yourself. But make no mistake, what people call too emotional, God calls prophetically tuned. You hear heaven differently. You feel spiritual shifts faster. You carry grief that isn't yours because God trusts you to stand in the gap for people who don't even know they're in danger. That's why rest never seems to be enough. Sleep doesn't clear spiritual downloads. Naps can't erase the weight of what you've absorbed, because what you're carrying isn't physical. It's spiritual. And only the presence of God can release what your soul has taken on. You've wept over people who never wept for you, prayed for those who mocked you, poured out until you felt empty, then got up and poured out again. Not because you're a martyr, but because you're marked. You're chosen. And chosen people often feel what others ignore. That sensitivity isn't weakness. It's sacred. It's how heaven communicates with you. It's how the Spirit leads you. And yes, it's overwhelming. Yes, it's lonely. Yes, it feels like too much sometimes. But that sensitivity is the reason the enemy works overtime to make you believe there's something wrong with you. If he can make you shut down your discernment, if he can get you to numb your feelings, he knows he can mute your voice. And if he can mute your voice, he can silence the warning heaven placed in your mouth for someone else's breakthrough. You've been carrying more than your portion, not because you're weak, but because you're chosen. You're exhausted, not from failure, but from faithfulness. So instead of trying to toughen up, press in. Instead of silencing your tears, bring them to the one who collects every single one. And instead of running from your sensitivity, realize it's your spiritual radar, your divine connection point to God's heart. Don't let the weight fool you. You're not falling apart. You're feeling what most people have trained themselves to ignore. You're not too much. You're just in tune. And in the kingdom of God, that's not a burden. That's a gift. Section 5. When the pain makes you want to disappear. There are places inside your soul you've never spoken about. Moments where the pain pressed so hard against your chest that you didn't want peace, you just wanted out. Not out of life itself, but out of the noise, the weight, the pressure to keep showing up when everything in you is begging to shut down. You weren't seeking attention. You weren't trying to make a scene. You just quietly wondered if it would matter to anyone if you vanished. You didn't want to die. You just didn't want to keep living like this. And maybe you've never said it out loud. Maybe you never dared to let those words leave your lips, but God heard it. That sigh, that silent ache, that moment you whispered, "God, I don't know how much longer I can do this." And instead of turning away, He drew closer. He didn't shame you. He didn't quote a verse at you. He stayed, because He's not afraid of your honesty. He's not offended by your weakness. In fact, He specializes in meeting people right there at the edge. You've been the strong one for so long, the one people lean on, the one who holds everyone else together, but who holds you when you feel like you're unraveling, who sees you when the tears fall after the room is empty, who reaches for you when the crowd stops cheering and the silence sets in. God does. Every time. And He's not waiting for you to put yourself back together. He's calling you just as you are, tired, raw, undone. This level of pain isn't random. The enemy's not after your peace. He's after your presence. He wants you to check out, shut down, fade away quietly so you won't walk in the fullness of what you were born to carry. Because you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for generations, for cycles to break, for patterns to shift, for strongholds to fall. And if the enemy can't destroy you, he'll try to drain you. He'll try to convince you that quitting is mercy, that walking away is peace, that disappearing is relief. But there's something inside you that won't let you go. A flicker, a whisper, a holy pulse in your spirit that says, "Not yet." That flicker is sacred. It's the part of you that's still holding on when every other part wants to let go. It's the part of you that still believes in God's promise, even through the fog of fatigue. It's the breath of the Holy Spirit keeping you alive, not just physically, but spiritually. You are not beyond repair. You are not broken beyond purpose. That heaviness isn't the end. It's the sign of how much is still in you. You've survived things others didn't walk away from. You've endured storms no one even knew you were in. And though you've wanted to disappear, though you've imagined a quieter life, a silent exit, deep down, you still want to live. Not just breathe, live fully, boldly, with fire again. That desire to vanish wasn't weakness. It was a cry for rest, for relief. And God heard it. And now He's responding, not with judgment, but with presence. Not with pressure, but with peace. So if today all you did was stay alive, if your only victory was whispering, "God, I'm still here," then heaven rejoices, because your existence is a threat to darkness. Your survival is prophecy, and your story isn't over. Not now, not like this. You are still chosen. You are still called. You are still breathing for a reason. Section 6. The isolation of the called. You've been surrounded, yet alone, in rooms full of people, yet unseen. Not because you're disconnected, but because you're different, and deep down, you've always known it. There's a separation that comes with being chosen. Not a punishment, but a setting apart. And though no one explained that part of the calling to you, you felt it in your bones. The invitations that stopped coming, the friends who grew distant, the connections that slowly faded without explanation. And it hurt. Not just because of what you lost, but because of what it confirmed. You don't fit where you used to belong. God didn't isolate you to punish you. He did it to preserve you. There are things growing inside you that can't survive in crowded rooms. There are whispers from heaven you'll only hear in the wilderness. And so while others seem to glide through life surrounded by affirmation and applause, you've been walking through seasons that feel like silence and shadow. But hear this. Jesus Himself often withdrew to desolate places, not because He wasn't loved, but because the weight of His assignment required solitude. So does yours. You've been entrusted with something heavy, a vision, a burden, a fire. And that fire can't be explained to people who haven't felt its heat. So God has allowed certain people to fall away, not because you're unworthy of connection, but because not everyone can go where he's taking you. And the ache you feel in the quiet moments, that longing for someone to get it, to see you. God sees it, and he answers it, not always with people but with presence, his presence. In this isolation, something holy is happening. You're learning to hear God without noise. You're learning to stand without crowds. You're learning to believe without applause. And when he releases you from this cave, you won't be the same. You'll be sharper, clearer, stronger, more dangerous to darkness than ever before. The world will think you just reappeared, but God knows you've been in training, in consecration, in the secret place. And what's coming next will be the evidence that isolation wasn't rejection, it was preparation. Section 7. You've been forged in fire. The version of you that's rising didn't come cheap. You were forged in fire, pressed by pressure, refined by nights you didn't think you'd survive. And though the scars are still healing, you're still standing. The enemy tried to convince you that the breaking was the end, but God was using it to build something that couldn't be shaken. You've been through too much to be shallow. The surface has no appeal anymore. You crave substance because your pain has dug wells too deep for small things to satisfy. Every tear, every sigh, every hour spent asking God why, it was shaping something in you. You were not wasting time, you were being formed. Your pain was not pointless. It was prophetic, because the crushing you've endured is the same crushing that brings forth oil. And those who carry oil don't walk the easy path. They walk the narrow one, the lonely one, the misunderstood one. But their footsteps leave fire behind. You've been underestimated because of your silence. People saw your stillness and assumed surrender, but what they didn't see is that you were being rebuilt from the inside out, piece by piece, layer by layer, faith being rewired, hope being restored, identity being reforged. You've been baptized in pain, but now you're rising in power. God didn't abandon you in the fire, he joined you in it, just like he did with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He didn't pull them out before the flames came. He showed up in the fire, and when they came out, they didn't even smell like smoke. That's what's happening with you. What should have destroyed you only refined you. And when you step out of this, people will wonder how you're still standing, but they won't smell the fire. They'll smell the fragrance of heaven on you. Don't rush this process. Don't despise the pressure. The version of you that's emerging is the one the enemy feared you'd never become. Stay in the fire. God's still working. And when it's done, you won't just survive, you'll carry glory. Section 8. Your rise is prophetic. The world sees a slow rise and assumes weakness. But in the kingdom, slow doesn't mean small. Delayed doesn't mean denied, and stumbling doesn't mean you're failing. Some rises take time because the weight of what's coming is too heavy to carry prematurely. That's your story. You've been rising inch by inch, breath by breath, and every part of that rise has been prophetic. Because your comeback isn't just about you, it's about everyone watching. It's about every person who quietly wondered if they could survive their own breaking. And when they see you stand, bruised, limping, but standing, they'll believe they can too. Micah said, "Though I have fallen, I will rise." That wasn't just confidence. That was covenant. That was a person who understood that failure isn't the end when your life is in God's hands. And that's what you need to remember right now. You might not feel strong. You might not feel holy. You might not feel ready. But your feelings aren't your foundation. His promise is, your rise has been fought for in blood, sweat and intercession. Heaven has been waiting for it. Hell has tried to stop it. And now, here you are. Still breathing, still chosen, still here. The ground beneath you remembers every night you cried yourself to sleep, and it will remember the moment you stood again. This isn't just a season change. This is a dimension shift. You're stepping into what tried to kill you. You're walking in the authority you gained in silence. And every step you take is prophecy fulfilled. You're not just rising, you're rising with fire, with vision, with oil, with scars that preach louder than sermons ever could. Don't downplay what you've survived. Don't minimize the strength it took to make it here. This rise is holy. It's loud in the spirit, and it's just beginning.
Conclusion. And now, everything shifts.
You didn't come this far just to go back to hiding. You weren't kept alive through sleepless nights, silent breakdowns, and spiritual battles just to settle for survival. This entire journey, the heaviness, the isolation, the nights you thought would break you, was never just pain. It was prophecy unfolding. Every tear was counted, every sigh recorded, every moment you chose to breathe instead of give up was a declaration in the spirit realm. I'm not done yet. You didn't stay in that bed because you were lazy. You stayed because your soul was at war. And now, something is shifting. Not all at once, not in some dramatic explosion, but in that quiet decision to rise again, even if your hands still shake, even if your voice still trembles, even if the weight hasn't fully lifted. You're rising. And that rise, in all its imperfection, carries more power than you realize. Because now you know that strength isn't in never falling, it's in choosing to stand again. You've learned to hear God in the silence. You've learned to carry oil in the dark. You've learned to worship with no music, to pray with no words, to believe with no visible proof. And that kind of faith, that kind of fire, it terrifies hell. God didn't leave you in the bed. He sat beside you. He fought for you. He waited with you. And now he's rising with you. This isn't just about getting up physically. It's about stepping back into the authority that's always been yours. It's about remembering who you are. Not who pain tried to make you, not who people assumed you were, but who God called you to be before the foundation of the world. So even if you rise in pieces, you are still rising in power. And when your feet touch the floor, you're not just starting a new day, you're stepping into divine purpose. You're stepping into your voice, your fire, your mantle. The enemy tried to suffocate it in your sleep. But here you are, breathing, standing, becoming. Let heaven rejoice. Let hell take notice. A warrior just got back up. And this time, you're not moving in your own strength. You're moving in resurrection power. You were never just fighting for peace. You were being prepared for impact. And now, everything shifts.